Welcome to the Peep Show podcast.
Your glance at sex, society, and culture.
With Jesse and PJ Sage. Welcome to the 9th episode of the Peep Show podcast. PJ and I spent 5 days in Vegas at AVN, and we have a bunch of really great interviews coming to you. Because this is a special episode, we are not going to begin with a news segment. Instead, we will share some field recordings from the expo. Then we will have 2 in-depth interviews. First, we will talk to Professor Lynn Comella, author of Vibrator Nation, about the history of female-owned sex shops. Then we will talk to clip producer and porn performer Dominic Rystan about the challenges of selling clips on ManyVids as a non-binary performer.
We're here for our first day at AVN talking to cam models and clip producers about what they hope to accomplish.
Hi guys, I'm Christy Ocean, and I'm here live at AVN with the Sages. I don't think we've ever called that before. And this is my first AVN. I'm super excited to be here. I'm a cam model for StreamMate. I've been doing it for a little bit over a year now. And I don't know what I'm doing here still. I was in the car asking myself that same question on my way here. I'm definitely going to be filming some content and just trying to get some new ideas and try some new products and then see all the cam fam. I think is the most important thing is just to connect with the rest of the industry so that we're not alone. That's why I'm here.
Hi, I'm Scarlet Raven. I am a content creator and live webcam model. I work on ManyVids and My Free Cams. I have been coming to AVN since 2012. I did take 2 different years off, so I've been 5 years now to AVN. One thing I have learned is that, when you come, it's really important that you have an objective. For me, this objective is filming as much content as I can, but also live camming with other cam girls just to get that exposure and get a little bit more regularity in my rooms and making content so that I can resell that content. So that's my big goal.
Hey, my name is Little Puck. This is my first time here at AVN. I'm super nervous, but very excited. There are so many hot people here. I'm dying. I really wanted to meet the ManyVids team. I'm set up here at the ManyVids booth today for 8 hours. So we're going to get real close and comfy and learn a lot about each other. And then I'm filming some custom content with Katie, who is a ManyVids model I super, super admire. I'm very excited to meet her and get to film with her. And then also just to meet my fans. So I hope some of you guys show up because I'm here. I'm waiting.
So my name is Miss Lollipop, or you can call me Lacey, and I also am one half of cammodelexpress.com. And so I'm a cam model on myfreecams.com. I've been there for 7 years, and I also run Cam Model Express, which is a resource and profile building service for My Free Cams girls. I've been coming to AVN for 7 years now. Maybe this is 8. I've been coming since 2011, so however long that is. And I'm here. I always think you should go in with a game plan every year. So, if you want to shoot videos, you should shoot videos. If you want to, meet members, if you want to, meet new clients, if you want to network with other models, if you want to do camming, whatever you're there for, I think you need to go in with a game plan. My game plan this year is working for Cam Model Express, networking, and I really like meeting my members. So we have a large group that comes in and we hang out and stuff like that. So that's in camming. I'm going to cam too.
So my name is Scarlett Fox, or Scarlett Fox Play, and mainly I'm a photographer, but I spend most of my time doing webcam modeling to obviously earn income, but I do enjoy actually filming my own content and taking my own photo sets. Been doing expos for 2.5 years, but this is my 2nd year at AVN. I love to meet fans, but I love to meet models, and it's a great networking opportunity. And plus, it's nice to be able to get out of your shell. Most of us as models stay in our house, so coming out and actually being able to feel comfortable in a public situation is an amazing feeling.
So that's a wrap on our interviews from the first day of AVN. We'll have more recordings from the expo floor in future episodes.
We are at AVN today with Dr. Lynn Comella, who is an associate professor of gender and sexuality studies at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. She is the author of Vibrator Nation, How Feminist Sex Toy Stores Changed the Business of Pleasure, and the co-editor of New Views on Pornography, Sexuality, Politics, and the Law. So welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me.
We're really interested in hearing about your book.
Vibrator Nation is the story of feminist sex toy stores in the United States and the women who pioneered them. So it's really a history of businesses like Eve's Garden, Good Vibrations, Babeland, Early to Bed in Chicago, Smitten Kitten in Minneapolis, the whole network of these feminist-identified, sex-positive, queer-friendly, trans-inclusive sex toy shops and the alternative retail model that particularly Good Vibrations really helped create that kind of was adopted subsequently by businesses that followed in its footsteps.
What was the difference in their business model and the ones that came before them?
Sure. Well, I think to really, make that distinction clear, it's useful perhaps to kind of transport listeners back to the early 1970s.
Okay.
Because we're in 2018 now, and there are a lot of women-friendly, queer-friendly, sex-positive, educationally oriented sex shops, both in the U.S. and in other countries now, too. And that was not the case in the early 1970s, right? So the first businesses, the real kind of pioneers, were Eve's Garden in New York City, which was founded by Del Williams in 1974. And it initially began as a mail order operation, and then she eventually opened a retail showroom. And then a couple years later, Joni Blank in San Francisco in 1977 started Good Vibrations. So in both of these cases, in the early 1970s and a few years later in the mid-1970s, you had these feminist entrepreneurs who were responding to what they saw as a lack.
Right.
There were a lack of places where women felt comfortable getting their vibrators, getting books about sex. There just were not places that had been created with female consumers in mind. The adult industry was overwhelmingly geared towards men, their desires, their wallets.
Right.
I don't even know if we can say that women were an afterthought. They weren't a thought.
Right.
They just so it was really revolutionary for, these women in the early 1970s to say, women deserve places that are created with them in mind and that, are trying to do something different than the typical adult store. So real quick, in terms of some of those differences, it boiled down to just creating what they saw as a more welcoming space, one that was well lit, that was friendly, that had a knowledgeable staff, that would actually interact with you, that didn't just sit behind the cash register and give you the stink eye if you were a woman who walked in, right? So there was the whole kind of feel of the store that they tried to really create a different vibe, a different kind of retail vibe, but also the products. The early retailers in the 1970s, they wanted to create a kind of shop for people who hated traditional sex shops.
Yeah.
And part of that included, not carrying porn.
Right.
Not because they were anti-porn necessarily, but they just didn't know much about it or didn't like it. Or in the case of Joni Blank and Good Vibrations, she just thought pornography was a sex shop cliche.
We were talking about this as we were looking through your book, and one of the things that we thought was striking is that they didn't put pornography up on the walls, and that was interesting to us because I do sex ed speaking engagements sometimes, and I did one at a sex club recently where it was funny to both of us because I was thinking, I'm trying to give a talk, and on huge televisions is really graphic porn, like all around me.
Yeah.
And it's a weird environment.
Yeah. And I should say, again, having interviewed Joni Blank many, many times over the years, she would talk about the fact that she made a choice. It was a conscious choice not to carry porn, not to carry lingerie, and what she called those kind of gimmicky adult novelty items like, soap on a rope shaped like a penis or, those kind of boob, things. So she didn't want to carry those things because, again, she thought they were just a sex shop cliche, and importantly, that you could get those kinds of things other places.
Right. And
she wanted to be able to provide her customer base with things that were harder to find, quality vibrators, which there weren't many in the mid-1970s, but over time, more and more, accurate sex information, books about sexuality and sexual health and wellness, and eventually feminist and queer pornography. Good Vibrations eventually began carrying that in the mid-1980s, and that was, or the mid to late 1980s, and that was largely in part because Susie Bright kind of made a case for why it was important to start start carrying porn.
Sure.
But so it was this case like, okay, if we're really committed to being a different kind of sex shop, let's show that in how we do business, how we think about business, what we carry, and, really kind of turn the traditional model of sex toy stores on its head in some interesting ways.
Right. Yeah. And I should say that my statement isn't at all like anti-pornography. It's just interesting.
No, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just interesting to think about like making very conscious choices about how you use that in different spaces and how that speaks to different audiences.
Yeah. And I think, to get like maybe a little bit more academic, I come from a communication and a media studies background, right? And so what a lot of media scholars do is we study representations and how representations work. So part of what I try to talk about in Vibrator Nation in specifically looking at the stores, which the book focuses on, I look at the brick and mortar stores. I don't talk about sex toy parties because that's a different retail model. I don't talk that much about online because that's a different retail model. I'm really interested in the stores as public spaces where people can step into their sexuality in a public way, and also in a way where they're positioned as sexual subjects, not necessarily sexual objects. So, going back to this idea of representation, one of the things that I found super interesting was the extent to which store owners saw their stores as a kind of blank canvas, that much like artists, they could put things in the store to communicate certain ideas about sex and sexuality, and create a different set of meanings around that than maybe what you would find at, a more traditional adult store. So if we're thinking about kind of how representations work to create meanings around gender and sexuality, I think these businesses were really fascinating in that regard.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's like when you were saying earlier that Jenny Blank called porn or lingerie in a sex shop a cliche, and it also, like, in terms of representation, it raises the question, like, a cliche for whom, or for who is the assumed customer, of the sex shop that would make that a cliche, right? And I think often part of the issue, I guess, is that, like, those items, particularly porn, but in general, is like they're oriented towards the male gaze, towards like cis het norms, and what turns men on. And I guess that seems to be sort of antithetical to what a lot of these women store owners were trying to accomplish, or who they were trying to make space for.
Yeah, and exactly right. And it gets complicated because on the one hand, these early pioneers like Del Williams and Joni Blank were doing something quite revolutionary in the 1970s. But now in retrospect, it was a limited kind of, kind of revolutionary idea. And what I mean by that is they were kind of gauging the idea of what women want based on their own comfort level and their own preferences. So they were making all sorts of assumptions about female sexuality,
you were talking.
Based on their own personal comfort level. And this assumption, which was part of that 1970s second wave feminism that kind of lumped all women together, right? You know, that there was this universal sisterhood. Feminists really had to work to be able to kind of push back against that and say, we have to acknowledge the differences that exist among women. Women aren't only different in terms of, their relationship to men. There are, significant differences, obviously, along the lines of race, ethnicity, social class, sexual orientation. So it's worth noting that these early businesses were founded by largely heterosexual, white, educated middle-class women who, in a sense were putting forward a certain sexual sensibility based on what they liked.
Right.
So in addition to not carrying porn initially, both Del Williams and Joni Blank didn't carry dildos initially because, they felt like, a dildo is just a disembodied penis. That was kind of Del Williams's take. And,
that was the rhetoric within like feminist philosophy for a long time too.
Yeah, right. And so they were, again, doing something radical in just catering to women, but their idea of the quote unquote, what do women want when it comes to sex was rather limited. And, it took other people kind of coming to them and making a case for like, what? I think women do like dildos. They like having something inside them. Maybe we should start to, carry some of the higher quality silicone dildos that are starting to merge on the market. But those, those did take, in some cases, those were the result of hiring staff who could kind of push those entrepreneurs forward into a different place in terms of how they thought about gender and sexuality. And that was necessary, right, to kind of continue to push the owners past their own understanding, ideas, oftentimes limited notions of desire.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all interesting. I guess like a charitable historical reading of that might be that they were sort of acting as a corrective to the kind of mindset that existed in sort of the mainstream culture of the early 1970s, still like very Freudian, influence. You still had like this notion of the vaginal orgasm versus the clitoral orgasm, and this devaluing of the clitoral orgasm. That distinction is seen as obsolete at this point, anyways. But at the time, that's the way people seem to think about things. So I guess maybe like one way of looking at it too is just that they were kind of overcorrecting or something, or really trying to push the pendulum in the opposite direction because they felt like there wasn't any space for acknowledging the legitimacy of clitoral orgasms and, what vibrators do.
Right. I mean, absolutely. Incredibly limited space. I mean, you certainly had pockets kind of within an emerging sex-positive feminism and within kind of, the GLBT movement that were kind of creating those spaces for different kinds of conversations around gender and sexuality. I think corrective is a good word. I often use the word intervention, right? It was a very deliberate intervention to kind of offer something that did not exist. And what I think is interesting about that is it's one thing to open a business when a market already exists and you're kind of going somewhere to occupy a space in a market that's been established and that's already has a kind of consumer base. And what's really interesting about the history of the early businesses is, you had these women. I mean, Dell Williams was in her early 50s when she started Eve's Garden. She kind of came alive when she encountered the women's movement in the early 1970s. So here she is in her early 50s saying women should be selling vibrators to other women. Why isn't anyone doing that?
Right.
She talked to some friends who were already selling, feminist buttons and books and said, would you add vibrators to your inventory list? And they weren't at all interested. So she literally kind of rolled up her sleeves, and jumped into the fray. By jumping into the fray, that inevitably meant that they were kind of jumping into a void. Like there was nothing there. They had to figure it out as they went. There was no model for them to draw on. There was no pre-existing template about what was involved in trying to market, vibrators to women. So it was very interesting, uncharted territory. I really see them as being quite bold because if they had thought a little harder about it, it may have felt too intimidating or overwhelming. No, seriously. Yeah. So I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they just, did roll up their sleeves and kind of with a sense of earnestness or righteousness felt like, okay, if nobody else is going to do this, I'm going to do this and make it happen. And, really did create a different kind of space in the marketplace, but also served as inspiration for other entrepreneurs. And that's what I kind of like about the story. I'm not just writing about one business or two businesses, but a whole network of businesses that over decades, took pieces of this early model and kind of reworked it to suit their own sensibility as entrepreneurs.
That's interesting to me because when I read this, I thought this was going to be a book about a form of social entrepreneurship. But in reading it and also in talking to you at the session, it really seems like this was more of a political project, and the entrepreneurship part, even though they did create a business model, was really kind of an afterthought, which is maybe why it was so easy for them to jump into that. So I was wondering if you wanted to talk to us a little bit of that, and then ultimately about kind of the fate of these businesses as time rolled on.
Sure. I mean, it's very much the case. And for me as a researcher and a writer, this was interesting for me to analyze and to think about and write about, was the fact that you have businesses, from the 1970s and, through the 1980s and even the early 2000s, who the businesses were leading with this kind of political impulse, right? That it was politically important and necessary to have sex-positive retail spaces that were more than just money-making machines, that were these educational resource centers, that were almost kind of like these quasi-therapeutic spaces. And by that, I mean that just the process of coming in, picking up a vibrator or a butt plug for the first time, breaking through that intimidation or that shame could have a therapeutic effect.
Sure.
That, they really saw these businesses as political enterprises, as a form of social activism, and were very, very committed to that. So every single business that I write about had a mission, a clearly articulated mission around sex education, personal empowerment, empowering the community, being a good place to work, providing, livable wages often for employees. So they saw their businesses as part of, this larger, important, necessary work around changing the sexual culture. And they led with that. And where it got dicey was often the more they led with that, the farther behind, the business piece of running a business kind of fell, right?
Yeah.
And so it was the case in some instances where, after years of businesses growing organically hand over fist, it reached a point where they were multi-million-dollar enterprises that suddenly needed new kinds of business expertise that nobody on staff, including, the CEO and the founders had.
Yeah.
And with changes in the marketplace and increased competition and online retailing, which certainly didn't exist in the 1970s and 80s, there was a moment in time where there was a bit of a crisis, in some businesses more acute than other businesses, but a kind of reckoning that, we can no longer ignore the fact that we are a profit-driven enterprise as much as we are a mission-driven enterprise. And we have to do more to balance that, because if we don't figure it out, we're not going to be able to do the political work that we're so committed to.
Yeah. There's something really interesting, I think, about the gender dynamic of all of this, given that business culture tends to be fairly masculine or almost exclusively masculine. And that then you have these women coming in who have a really strong mission and who are actually very successful, but then who are struggling with trying to run the business with the business model. I actually think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, and they're paving their own path in ways that there is no model for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, many of the businesses were, in fact, figuring it out as they went. And that was not a quick process. That was decades, 2 decades, 3 decades long process in some cases. But I think you're exactly right. I mean, one of the things that I write about, I have a whole chapter that's devoted to profitability and social change and trying to understand the various tensions around, those related but also competing parts of these businesses. And it was very gendered, I thought, the way that a lot of business owners and employees talked about money, They had trouble reconciling their kind of impulse to change the world with the fact that they were participating in a capitalist system that, they found on some level distasteful. So here they were, players in a capitalist system that they didn't particularly like, and it sometimes was easier for them to think of themselves as, sex educators and sex activists. Mm-hmm. They knew they were also running a business, but they just,
that wasn't the core identity that they were,
Joni Blank,
they were leading with.
Yeah. So there's the gendered aspect around, just trying to figure out the money piece. And then, that gets kind of, layered over this discourse of doing social good, because when, women have a long history of volunteerism, of, kind of doing good. And, I had one of my interviewees tell me that, women aren't supposed to make money from doing good.
That's
that
really
you can make money from, like, I don't know, selling a refrigerator or selling a car. But when you're actually kind of trying to do, good in a kind of social entrepreneur way, they struggle with this idea that you're not supposed to profit off of that.
Yeah, I used to work as a doula. And when I worked as a doula, within doula culture, there's a huge divide between the people who think that they should be paid for their labor because it is actually very hard to be a doula and very time consuming. And it turns your whole world upside down because you're on call 24/7. Always. And those who think that there's something distasteful about making money on the emotional labor that you give to other women, which should like flow out of your heart. And I understand that, but I also think that when you're a breadwinner for your family, that there's something about the idea that women's emotional labor shouldn't be capitalized on. That's
or compensated actually.
Anyway. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Well, I just want to point out that you are the third person in about the last 4 months who have used doulas and midwifery as a parallel to the tensions that I'm talking about, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
I did a book event at Lotus Blooms, which is a great kind of feminist sex toy shop in Alexandria, Virginia, in November. And one of the women who works at the store wrote her honors thesis on midwifery and on kind of this tension. It was either midwifery or doulas, but maybe overlapping with both. But that tension between doing good and money and reference these debates, right? So it is interesting to think that, these, I like it when people read my book about the history of feminist sex toy shops and are able to draw parallels to different industries or different spheres of work, because these tensions aren't unique just to the world of, feminist and queer-friendly sex shops. There are tensions that, permeate these other endeavors where individuals, oftentimes women, are trying to come to grips with their value and asking for fair compensation for their work, even in the midst of helping others and trying to do good work.
Yeah, and I think that there is this tension between like capitalist systems and solidarity with other women, because you have, on the one side of those particular debates, not all women can afford doulas, but don't they deserve like the support? And sure, they deserve the support, but then what does that mean for doulas? Unless you're going to like entirely change the system and have insurance pay for it or something, which is not happening.
Right.
Yeah, but also the way that gets framed too is like there's a certain implicit assumption that you have these two distinct structures or value systems that are fundamentally and inevitably in conflict and irreconcilable with one another. And I mean, that's certainly one strain of thought, and we can understand where that comes from. But there's also like other ways of thinking, even like native to feminism. I'm thinking Donna Haraway, for example, focusing much more on the idea of like infiltration and like not seeing different systems or ideologies or values necessarily in conflict, but seeing them as like historically fluid and affecting one another, and focusing not on like the inevitable conflict, but how can we actually get into the thing that's a problem for us and change it from within rather than just separating from it, And it seems like that is kind of what has happened here, right? Like so much of what these founders of these sex toy companies were doing in the 70s has now totally mainstreamed by the 21st century, even really by the 90s, right, had mainstreamed.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that was really interesting for me in doing this research and writing this book was attempting to kind of engage with those tensions. And I do think, we're a world in which we think very kind of in binaries and kind of polar opposites, right? So politics can't at all be commensurate with business.
Right.
Feminism can't at all be commensurate with the sex industry. And, there's certainly strains of thought that really buy into that, right? Like there can't be such a thing as feminist businesses. And,
let alone feminist sex businesses.
Exactly, right? So one of the things that I argue in the book is that these entrepreneurs did find ways to kind of bring into contact with each other kind of feminism and capitalism, feminism and the sex industry, kind of reworking those things, reworking ideas ideas and understandings about those things in ways that I think are really, really productive, because I think it's a false bifurcation to think that, politics and business, can't coexist. There's lots of examples where they do coexist, or that feminism and the sex industry are inherently antithetical. And I really try to disrupt those ideas and challenge those ideas, because I don't think they're, ultimately productive. But the other part of the book is to say that, you can rework these things, but not necessarily easily. And you don't necessarily ultimately reconcile the tensions, but that's okay. You can bring these worlds together. And, part of what's interesting is the creative ways in which they've tried to, rework the sex industry from within, rework ideas about business from within. That doesn't mean they're always successful. It certainly doesn't mean it's smooth and without bump after bump after bump. But just the creativity and the passion and the mindfulness of the entrepreneurs that I study and write about, I think is really, really remarkable. Like, we believe in sex education, and we believe that people deserve accurate information and quality products, and that they deserve an affirming experience if they walk into a sex store. And I want to be part of that revolution, even though it's not going to be easy, and even though it is more likely than not going to not going to be profitable. And I have a lot of appreciation for the willingness of some of these business owners throughout the different decades to literally set up shop.
Yeah.
And to occupy a space in an industry and in a culture that hasn't always been receptive to these things.
And and I think when going back to the idea of representational politics, like, that's so important, to occupy a space and to lay claim to it and say, we are here and this is what we're trying to do.
Right.
So where can people find your book and other information about the work that you've done?
Sure. Well, I have a website, lyncomella.com. So it's like great one-stop shopping for information about me and the book and my academic work, some of my popular writing, and, media mentions about the book. And there are lots of places you can get the book, which I'm really happy about. But I'm going to direct people, support your local indie bookstore. And if you are lucky enough to live in a city that has a feminist or queer-friendly sex shop, you can buy it at a lot of places: Good Vibrations, Babeland, Self-Serve, Early to Bed, Smitten Kitten,
that's great,
etc. So you can certainly get it from online entities, which I won't name, but shop local, whatever that may look like in your community. And I'm happy to say that a lot of places are carrying the book.
That's so great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We're really thrilled to have gotten to talk with you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we have with us today Dominic Rystan, who's a non-binary video producer with a clip store on ManyVids. And we met them at a bar last night here at AVN, and we're really interested in what they were saying about having a clip store as a non-binary person. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. So you were telling us a story last night about what it's been like to have your clip store on ManyVids. And for people who don't know, ManyVids is a platform where people can sell like their own short clips. And so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So when I first signed up for ManyVids, basically I was just looking for a good place to start selling clips, because I model with live webcams on Chatterbait, but the way that they host videos isn't very good, and it basically compresses them and makes them a lot lower quality, and they can't be very long. So I was looking for a place where I could host high quality content, and I stumbled across a few places, but ManyVids was one that seemed like it was the most put together for me. And when I first signed up, there was only two categories. There was MV girls and MV producers. And as someone who produces clips and videos, I thought of myself as a producer. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. I'll sign up as a producer. At the time,
that's interesting in and of itself, though, that there's this binary between like girls who perform and then producers.
Yes, producers.
It's like a gender and a thing you do.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. And also, as someone who makes videos and plans on making more videos where I take more of a directorial role and am behind the camera, I definitely think that that would be applicable to call myself a producer there, even if they think like you can't be a producer if you're in it.
Is that the case?
I would.
If you're in it, can you not call yourself a producer?
Well, that's what they were kind of trying to say when I first signed up, which didn't really make sense to me because there were definitely studios where it was just the same male performer with a bunch of different female performers.
Right.
And like it was very obviously self-shot.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a weird dichotomy because there's so much crossover between cameras and clip producers, and all of that is done by oneself. So you are both the performer and the producer of the clip.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you're doing the editing and the cinematography and all of that by yourself most of the time, unless you can afford to hire cinematographers and editors and microphone operators and all that stuff.
At which point you probably can afford to, have your own website and not host your stuff on ManyVids.
Exactly. So, maybe think about that if you're at that point, folks. But yeah, so, I signed up as a producer and I filled out the legal information because whenever you sign up for, an adult website, you have to age verify, you have to verify your location and things like that for, tax purposes. So I was filling out all the information and then they reached out to me and they were basically like, hey, we are not taking solo men right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't actually sign up. And I was like, I just didn't respond because like I was addressed as a solo man, which is like, I mean, I get it because like I am partially a boy. That's definitely true, but I'm not solely a boy.
Yeah, and that seemed pretty presumptuous for them just to assert your identity for
but
you.
Like, I do understand why they do that because it's really common for people to do that. So like I wasn't like thrown through a loop like, what the hell are they doing? I was kind of like, okay, yeah, that's pretty normal. So at that point I was like, okay, well, I'll just, put this on the back burner for now. And then I think maybe a few months later, ManyVids basically did this whole PR campaign where they're like, oh, we're inclusive now. And like, we have a bunch of options and look, we have a rainbow in our title now. Look, we're inclusive. So like, they started taking.
So what categories did they?
Basically, they created 2 new categories they already had MV girls and MV producers, and then they made MV boys and MV trans.
Okay.
And at that time, basically what I did was I saw that they were doing this, whole inclusivity campaign. So I emailed one of the people and I was like, hey, I see that you're, now including more folks in what you're allowing to be on your site. So I'd love to pick up where I left off.
Sure.
And, start uploading videos. And they're like, yeah, sure. So when I first did this, basically because they had denied me the first time, I don't think they had ever had this happen before or maybe even after. But when I tried to complete filling out the information and getting my account launched, basically the way that their website was designed wouldn't let me re-upload any of my legal documents.
Huh.
So I was like stuck without being verified and able to upload for like a week. And they were talking to me, the people at support, and they had to call their web developers to fix the problem that I was going through.
Right.
Which I thought was really funny because of the way that it was all happening. It was like, this could have just all been avoided if you had just let me be a producer to begin with.
Right, exactly.
But, it's just funny because it's like, they weren't prepared for that at all. They weren't prepared for all the people that they had previously denied because I wasn't the first person who had tried to work here before they called themselves inclusive.
You'd almost think that they invited people to do that and then were surprised when it happened.
Yeah, exactly. I would imagine that what they would have done would be to be like, hey, sorry we didn't let you in the past. We're going to make sure that you can get on now. We're going to reach out and make sure that you have an easy time.
Because if they had done that, then you would have thought that it was more than just inclusivity in name. Mm-hmm. They were actually taking their trans and non-binary performers into account.
Yeah, and taking people seriously. And even just the men who applied to work there. Because I imagine that there were plenty of men who wanted to produce content there. And
if they didn't, for whatever reason, qualify under the producer category, then they would have also been denied.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I'm fairly certain, I'm not 100% certain, but I'm fairly certain that even in the producer category, it was only allowed to be straight porn.
Huh.
Okay. So you couldn't be a gay porn producer.
Right.
But anyway, with the release of the new categories, what happened was they limited what the categories could do. So when they first released the categories, the rules were MV girls can be girls alone, solo girls.
Right.
or girls with men
Okay.
or girls with girls.
Yeah.
And of course, when they say this, they mean specifically people who are read as cis. The rules for every producer was it had to be boy, girl only.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I find that shocking, actually. I didn't realize that ManyVids was that heteronormative.
Yeah. They had a lot of very strange rules when I first joined. And then, so the MV boy category, it was, at the time, it could only be solo boys or boys with boys.
Really?
That was it. The MV boy category, when they first started it, was solo boys or boys with boys. So if you were a gay porn
This is so
producer,
strange, and it seems like arbitrary.
Yeah.
Set up these categories. We don't like lesbians,
Yeah.
but gay men are okay. But producers can only do het porn. Like what?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, they let the MV girls make lesbian porn if they wanted to, because
Sure.
that was allowed. But yeah, anyway. And then in the trans category, it was basically the most flexible category because it could be what they consider to be trans performers with cis performers of any kind,
Sure.
whether
yeah.
they be men or women, or I don't know when they made them, but those were the rules that they had.
And it may be the case that they made them and didn't enforce them consistently all the time or something.
Yeah. So around March, I got a message from ManyVids support. And I had already had like videos up of just me alone.
Okay.
Because that was the majority of my content at the time was just solo videos of myself. Then I got a message from ManyVids support. And I'm going to read it for you because I'll try and explain how I perceived it after I read how it's actually written to you.
Okay.
Just so it'll make sense.
Yeah.
So this is the message. Hey, as per a recent change in the way our sellers are displayed, we have verified your account and would like to notify you of the following changes. This account has been converted to MV Boy, as you're the main performer in the vid, and producer accounts are reserved for those who don't necessarily appear within their own content. Alternatively, you will need to remove the content with a female performer and create a new producer/straight account for those vids.
Yeah. So they wanted you to make 2 accounts.
Yeah, well, so what I read, when I see the word alternatively there,
Right.
what I read was if you want to be a producer, you have to only put boy-girl content up.
Right. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I guess I'm just in the boy category now. Like they didn't ask me my gender. They didn't ask like, hey, are you trans? Like, do you want to be in the trans category? Like,
Right.
hey, like we have rules about the producer category. What other category works best for you?
Right.
They
Yeah.
didn't- They just told me you're in the boy category now. And I was. I went and looked and like I was in the boy category. I'm now like,
To your surprise.
yeah, I'm now like in the fucking monthly, like, I didn't even know at the time about the whole monthly competitions, but I was now in the monthly competition in the boy category.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of weird and a little shitty, but like also like, okay, I guess I'm just here now. So when I read alternatively, like I said earlier, I read it as if you want to be a producer, you have to get rid of the solo videos and go just boy girl videos.
Right.
So, and I was like, okay, great. I'm done. That's it. They moved me to the boy category. I don't necessarily want to be in the boy category, but I'm here now. So whatever.
You're pretty easygoing.
Yeah. Like I'm going to like just figure it out as I go. At the time I like looked at the trans category and it was mostly binary trans women in the category.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't want to co-opt that
That's
space.
the case on Chatterbait too, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like I don't really want to co-opt that space and like take my fans who have followed me for a long time since before I knew I was non-binary.
Right.
Right. It seems like that's especially acute of an issue given that ManyVids sets up their site as a contest within those categories.
Exactly.
So you're like actually competing for money within within those categories.
That's the main thing is I didn't want to like take because I was like starting to be at the top of the boy category pretty quickly because I had videos that were like priced fairly high.
Right.
And were like really well produced and like were videos of me and other people. So like people were buying them. I was usually like number 2 or number 3 like in the actual lineup of the monthly competition in the boy category. And that felt bad too because it was like a lot of them just had solo videos or videos with other men. And I was like, I'm not trying to like steal from you either.
Yeah.
But as I looked around, I started to notice, okay, there are some other boys who have content with women and like, I'm not necessarily a boy, but I'm also not necessarily not a boy. So like, whatever. I'm
Sure.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm here. I don't want to make it more complicated than it is. I just want to sell videos.
And that is, after all, where ManyVids stuck you. So there's that
exactly.
aspect of it too.
Exactly. So at that point, I was like, okay, we're done. I'm going to keep selling videos, and it's going to be great. All right. So that was in March 10th, and then I got this. Hi. So in the first message, let me just tell you a little bit about the attitude. In the first message, it was, hey, exclamation point.
Mm-hmm.
As in, I'm happy to see you.
Yeah.
In the second message, it's hi, comma. As in, some shit's about to go down, my friend. We're not happy.
Right. Yeah.
We're not happy.
Yeah.
You did not remove the straight vids from your profile as requested. So we will be making the adjustment on the back end. And this is considered a 1 warning, as you have not respected our above request, which was confirmed as seen.
Wow, that's super aggressive.
Yeah.
So confirmed as seen, meaning they saw that you read the message.
They saw that I read the message. And basically, when I read the message, I was like, okay, great. I'm in the boy category now.
Right. I think that's what I would have done too, because it didn't specifically say, like, you must take your content down.
Because the paragraph, alternatively, you will need to remove the content with female performer and create a new producer/straight account for those videos. I took that as meaning, like the wording there, if you actually read it the way that they meant it, like it is written in a manner which says you have to remove the videos and go over there.
Okay.
But the way that I read it
Yeah.
was, alternatively, if you want to be a producer,
Right. You have to do it this way.
because our rules have changed. If you want to be a producer, you have to only have those kind of videos there.
Right.
And I was like,
I get where you're coming from.
I was like,
Yeah.
okay, sure. So at that point, I was like making a lot of passive income from the videos that I had been producing for the almost 2 months, right? So basically for those 2 months, I was one of the top MV boys. Not only was I making a decent amount from the sales alone, I was also making that bonus every...
Right, yeah. Because of the contest. So the top couple of people get like bonus
Yeah.
checks every month.
Yeah. And okay, so this is kind of where it gets weird. So we're going to go down a little bit of a mini rabbit hole here. So they deleted all my, what they qualified as straight videos, and I'm holding up bunny ears for everyone who's listening.
We will confirm that, yes.
Straight videos. What they considered straight videos, they removed them from my account. So they were no longer there. They didn't exist on the site. They were just gone. At that moment, I like went into full panic because it happened early morning, and I was having like a great day. I had just had breakfast or something, and I was like on the phone with like one of my partners and like hanging out with my other partner, and it was like, oh, this is so cool. And then like I see this message, and then all of a sudden all my videos are gone.
Right.
And I'm like, oh fuck.
Right.
And I like go back up and I read the earlier message, and I was like, oh God, like I guess I see what they could have meant there. I might have just read it wrong.
Yeah.
So I responded to them and I wrote, I suppose I didn't understand the request. If you'd be willing to clarify, are you saying as an MV boy, I'm not allowed to have videos with women in them? And as an MV producer, I'm not allowed to have videos without women in them? Because from your initial message, I didn't even interpret that you were asking me to change anything. I thought you were just saying that you moved me to the MV boy category, and that was all the message meant.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then they responded, yes. Yes, that is exactly it. MV boy accounts are designed for male content, solo or gay. And producer/straight accounts would be appropriate for BG content.
This is so weird.
When the male is the owner of the account.
Whoa.
I'm sorry about the confusion. I will remove the warning flag due to the misunderstanding. That's what they said.
Yeah.
And I was like,
but that
okay.
doesn't mean your videos went back.
No, it doesn't. So that was May 2nd. That was the last message they sent me. It was May 2nd. And basically at that point, I like started freaking out.
So this is not only like totally cis and het centric, it's also really sexist.
Yeah, really sexist and also like very assumptive.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of assumptions made.
Like only cis straight men are producers?
Yeah. I don't know if they necessarily meant it that way, but that was like how it was written. So
Right. but that's the weird, I mean,
because
this whole policing of like gender presentation and
what kind of partner is your allowed to have?
right, like sexual orientation or biologic, all of this trying to regulate all of this stuff at the same time in the construction. Like, it's just head spinning. I didn't realize that it's, I mean, I'm not even sure what their purpose here is. I guess they're trying to like protect precious, you know, cis-het men's eyes from possibly being exposed to, you know, something slightly non-normative by accident or something. But it's like a...
Well, that's what I was thinking as you were talking. Like, what do they care about this?
Yeah.
Like, if you're selling videos, why... What's it to them what videos you're selling?
What if they just had one kind of account and then people use tags?
Yeah. Hey. or like if you really care about those people who are like terrified of seeing things that aren't straight, you could maybe put in like a little check mark in their settings that says, I don't want to see non-straight content, similar to how like OkCupid has I don't want to be seen. I don't want to see or be seen by straight people.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, right. And then even when you upload a video, you could have a checkbox that is like, this content is safe for sensitive cishet men.
This content is safe for people who are afraid of seeing anything that isn't straight and like cis.
Right.
Cool.
Which, by the way, I don't want to associate with any of those people.
Yeah.
And I mean, as obnoxious as that is, it actually seems like a more sensible solution.
Yeah, it makes more sense than like trying to like juggle like putting people. Okay, but
and it's no less offensive. I mean, that's essentially what. It's not like they're saying anything that's less overtly, you know, cis-normative or like, you know, heteronormative or something. Anyways, not, you know.
So at the time that this happened, I was freaking out. Right. And I was like, okay, what the hell do I do? And I was like, okay, but wait, I remember other boys in the boy category having content with women. So I went through every other top boy. They were all still there. Oh. Every single one that I saw before still had that kind of content.
Because they were cis presenting.
I don't know why.
Right.
But it was that way.
Yeah.
So at that point, basically, because I felt so singled out by ManyVids, I went back and retroactively deleted everything related to ManyVids on my Twitter account, which I use for promotion, and on my Chatterbait account, which is where I cam, and sometimes I get some crossover there.
That must have been fairly time consuming, wasn't it?
It was, but it was like, I can't allow myself to be part of this. I can't and like also all these links are dead.
ManyVids does that, like shout out every time you have a sale.
Yeah.
But like, you know, all these links are dead now too.
Right.
Like quite a few of these links aren't dead because they're solo videos, but all the ones that aren't are dead.
Right.
Because at the time I hadn't had any I'm doing bunny ears again. I hadn't had any boy videos. And I had been wanting to shoot some bunny ears boy videos for a very long time. Because like, you know, I have had models that I really admire, like some men that I really wanted to fuck on camera. But like, you know, it just, the timing never worked out until very recently. So I just had solo videos on there, which I didn't sell nearly as many as the couple videos that I did.
Yeah.
Sure.
All of my passive income was gone.
Yeah.
Immediately. And then I went back and retroactively deleted everything that was related to ManyVids because it was like, you know, 50% of this is already dead links.
Right.
And like, I wasn't making nearly anything when I was selling solo content.
Yeah.
Was like, okay, I guess I just have no passive income right now. I went back and I messaged them again and I said, okay, are the genders of performers limited or restricted on trans accounts and girl accounts? Because for one, I was like, can I move? And for two, like, how fucked up is that? If the girl account doesn't have a fucking gender restriction, but fucking the boy account does,
right?
That's so fucked.
Sure.
That's bizarre.
Right.
Like,
that's the word I was gonna use.
Hey, if you're a boy and you fuck boys, you have to only fuck boys, right. And then make another account for when you fuck girls as a producer.
Right.
Like, what?
That's
and
really
then if you
weird.
fuck trans women too, or trans men, you have to make a trans account.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? So like, if someone was just a man who makes content with other people,
right?
I was trying to clarify basically. So that's the question I asked. You know, are the genders of performers limited or restricted on trans accounts and girl accounts? That was the question.
Yeah.
And they responded, hey, MV girls are female performers. Trans can either be female or male. And I was like, eye roll. Okay, right. What does this mean, though? Let me clarify further so you understand my question. But I'm definitely dealing with a different person this time because the way that they're interacting with me is they leave a smiley face. Like the last person I talked to was not happy to talk to me. Yeah. This person's like, hey, what's up? It's so good to hear from you. Wow. And then I was like, okay, but are there limitations as to the genders of people they can appear with? Mm-hmm. And they wrote, MV girls can appear with other girls or boys. MV trans can appear with other boys, girls, or trans. And right there, I mean, trans folks out there, y'all know if you're a trans girl and you're being separated from girls to be called trans.
Sure, right.
As like your gender.
Right, yeah.
Like you are trans. It's like, I'm a girl. Trans is like part of that.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's an othering that's going on
for
in
sure.
that process.
And like I understand that like from a perspective of someone who doesn't know what that's all about, like they don't necessarily mean to do that.
Right.
I'm not trying to be like, y'all fucking suck. But
here's the thing that I think, though, in the population at large, sure. But I think that people who work in the sex industry and people who work in adult content production, I feel like they should have a vocabulary to be able to understand gender identity. I don't think that this should be so difficult for them.
No, for sure. I think that there's definitely a level of homework that should be required to be in the industry. But at the same time, there are so many people who would hardcore disagree with that and would like fist fight me.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think some of it, I think that a lot of it is intentional. I mean, I think it's just about marketing, their marketing decisions. But the problem is that ultimately it becomes a process of regulating sex and gender. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I could do those ManyVid people's jobs. Like I couldn't personally write those emails in good faith, right?
Fuck, this sucks.
Like at the very least, they would be full of brackets that say cis.
Exactly.
I would be like, I'm sorry, I know these are the, they'd be full of like bunny ears and stuff because I think that's a difficult thing, and I do understand that they're in a situation where they have to market towards certain norms that exist in society, but the problem is that like those marketing decisions have consequences both for performers and for the norms of society.
Definitely.
Like they help construct those norms. Yeah. They're not just like passively reading them and then
Right. This is why I think that they should be fluent in categories of gender and sexuality, and they should be able to navigate these issues. That's part of our job in this industry, I think.
And I mean, to be fair to them, they would probably be like, yeah, but we're using the word trans.
Yeah, they're not throwing slurs at you.
Which was the norm all of 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, there is like some way relative to the rest of the industry that they're progressive, but their industry itself is like really far behind where I think discourse about sex is in the rest of society right now, which is like rocketed ahead of that.
Anyway, so then I responded, okay, can I then be moved to the trans category since I have and plan on releasing content featuring trans folks and cis men and cis women, and since I am an NB trans person myself? And they respond, we have converted you to the trans category.
Oh, wow.
Smiley face. And I'm like,
if only you knew it was going to be something
shit, dude. I sent that at 11:31 a.m. They got me transferred at 1:12 p.m.
Wow.
Took 2 hours. And I was like, well, damn, dude, it would have been dope if you would have fucking communicated with me a little bit better. We could have made this happen.
Right.
And then I said, thank you. And, I was trying to be nice to this person. Give me smiley faces. I appreciate this person, even if, like, your language might have been a little off. Like, you're doing good.
At least you tried.
You're trying. And I appreciate your jovial, emote-based attitude. Even if in real life you were frowning the whole time, I imagine that you were smiling at me. Anyway, so basically then I responded, thank you. Is there any way you can replace the videos that were removed earlier this month? I'm hoping that the people who purchased them can regain access, but if it's impossible, I understand. And basically I was thinking, if I can get those back, then the people that already paid for them can have them, because like it would make me feel really shitty as someone who cares about like markets and like trading.
Yeah, understandable.
Like if I gave people a product that they wanted access to and they had access to, and then all of a sudden they didn't anymore because of something that happened, you know, unrelated.
Right, sure.
And then they responded, you know, after I asked that, they were like, "Hi, they have all been reactivated," smiley face.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, thank the Lord. Oh. That was such a big moment for me. I like almost cried, I think. I was like, this is great. I have my content back and now I'm in the trans category. Yes.
But that's so frustrating. I understand you being super excited about that, but it's so frustrating because if it was that easy, why wasn't that information disseminated to you so you could make your own determinations about how you want to be categorized?
Yes.
And they should know that these are like very personal and very political things that,
for a lot of people,
that you don't want to be callous about. Like you could at least try to like understand where people's coming from. But even if you're like just a cold-hearted business, that was not good customer service. No. Not just to you, but to all of those customers
people who bought the content.
Who were just like, whoa, I subscribed to this, and then you know all this shit's getting moved around, and I don't know if I have access to it. You know, it's like that kind of.
They can't find you anymore. And
especially because, I mean, you seem fairly amenable to working something out with them. So, you know, it would have probably been minimal effort on their part to work out a solution that would have provided ongoing access to their customers.
And it didn't need to take from the beginning of March until the end of May to work this out.
They could have even maybe given me a second warning, because I didn't understand the first one.
Right.
And I know that they saw that I had read it because I read receipts, but I didn't interpret what they meant.
Right.
And they could have been more clear. Like, hey, like they could have been stern and mean. Like, you know, if that's how they wanted to be. Like, hey, you can't have that here. Okay, you got to have a different thing.
Right.
And then I've been like, oh, shit, okay. I didn't understand that's what you meant. But instead, they just deleted it immediately and told me, you know, you read it. You knew what we meant.
Yeah.
Get fucked.
Right.
I mean, they could have been like, this is your final warning. If, you know, this is not dealt with in 24 hours, like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So that was in May. And, you know, at that point, there were still some MV boys that still had content with girls. But like, I'm not going to like report them or be like, what about these people? Like, why are they allowed? Like, I'm not that kind of person. It's like, if you're getting away with some shit that's against the rules, like, good for fucking you. Fuck the rules. Like, get that paper.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
But like, you know,
I'm like you too. I don't ever understand why anyone is in anyone else's business.
Yeah. But, you know, I understand like some people are like very competitive. I've never been a competitive person. I'm very much like, let's all lift each other up.
Right. Yeah.
And like, let's play like the cool like gardening game where we all like build the garden together instead of like trying to steal each other's settling land or whatever. I don't know. I'm just giving board game concepts that I have played.
I hear you. My thought is there's no shortage of like customers. There's room for everybody.
Yeah, but I still haven't fully recovered.
Yeah.
I still haven't come back to the place I was.
Yeah.
The amount I was earning. I'm not like, you know, super mad, but it's just like frustrating.
Sure. Yeah.
That I haven't recovered this. So that whole thing happened in May. Right. And then in August, I noticed that someone who used to be in the producer category was now in the boy category. And there was like several people who used to be in the producer category because they only produced what would be considered boy-girl content to the site.
Right.
We're now in the boy category all of a sudden. And I was like, what the fuck is happening right now?
Yeah.
Because it was like, did y'all really change the rules a few months later after fucking my whole
rigmarole? Yeah.
After fucking my whole passive income up.
Right.
And I understand that they're the reason I have this passive income.
Right.
But and like I appreciate that, but at the same time, like if they're gonna change the rules in a few months to include the type of content that they thought I was making, even though I wasn't technically making that type of content due to my gender.
Yeah.
The type of content I was making is now allowed over there.
Right.
All of a sudden.
Yeah.
And now like the person who used to be the top producer, I guess My theory is that that person was moving down in ranks in the producer category because it was getting really heavy in the producer category and was like, I want to be an MV boy.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's about me. Like, because, yeah, like if you're the main performer, that's the mainstay. Right. Like it is. Like you're the one. If the studio is your literal name,
yeah,
it's
sure.
like, yeah. If you consider a producer like a company, it's like, why not center yourself? So I understand being moved to the boy category if you identify as a boy.
Right.
And being like, you know, I want to make a little bit more money maybe. Like,
yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Feel like you're more competitive in that contest.
Yeah, because there's a lot less people in the boy category than there is in the producer category.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well, I'm making good sales in the producer category, but I'm not winning anymore. So maybe I'll move over there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think that's a shitty thing to do. I don't think that's bad. I'm not trying to like throw shade at that person or those people for doing that. But yeah, so that at that point I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like you put me through all this shit just to switch it up on me.
Yeah.
And like I now feel like I'm co-opting, you know, trans woman space.
Right.
And like binary trans person space. And I know that not everyone in the trans category is binary trans and not everyone is a trans woman. There's trans men in there.
Yeah.
And like all kinds of folks in there. But like I felt like because I made good sales, like I was going to take money away from those people who have like nowhere. You know what I mean? Like it's so much harder for trans performers. So I don't want to make it harder on trans performers.
Yeah.
And like I understand I'm a trans performer myself.
Right.
But like, you know, I'm not trying to like encroach on your space and like
because you can move more fluidly,
exactly.
like into different categories than they can.
Yeah, I can like pretend I'm a boy who's into boys.
Yeah.
And like it's gay porn now.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Whereas like technically it's always queer porn.
Yeah.
Because I'm, you know, non-binary.
Right.
But
like
the companies are going to label it how
exactly,
they want to label
it how they want. Yeah.
And, you know.
But like they can't do that. It's always trans porn for trans women.
Right.
Yeah.
Always.
Right. Yeah.
It's always that. So like.
And that's always a limited market.
That fact alone is the reason that it made me uncomfortable because I can have that flexibility and I don't want to take that money with that flexibility that I feel they rightfully earn.
Right.
And, you know, some people disagree with me there and be like, as non-binary people, we need the space too. And it's like, yeah, for sure we do. Yeah. I definitely feel that. And that's why I don't like the category system.
Right.
Because it puts binary trans people against non-binary trans people because of the way that some of us anyway, can be more fluid and fit into more categories that production houses or whatever would define us as.
That seems like just a really important point.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to this idea that like the porn industry doesn't just sort of read the categories that are out there in the world and then mirror them, but is really involved in like constructing
how they're defined.
Yeah, and those decisions that they make on how to define these categories has like very material consequences, you know, for performers and honestly probably even more broadly for viewers and how viewers think about the world.
It definitely changes how viewers perceive performers and how they perceive what they like to watch.
Yeah. And by extension, like what they end up liking in their own like sexual relationships.
Yeah. And I mean, part of that I feel is okay. Like with tagging systems, I feel like that's great.
Yeah.
Like if you want to see like big beautiful women, you should have a BBW tag.
Yeah.
And when you look up BBW, you should see big beautiful women.
I think that actually, I hadn't really thought that much about this until we started having this conversation, but it seems like this could all be cleared up by people just putting their own tags.
Exactly. And like
and
that's
not
the thing,
having those categories.
Is like you're allowed to tag your stuff on ManyVids. You put tags in, but it's mainly just the type of kink you're into. But I feel like you could
use the same thing for gender identity or for sexual orientation as well, without having to force everybody into these static categories.
And like I definitely feel where people are coming from, where they're like, well, these categories exist because like people want to watch specific things, and it's like, yeah, I get that, but like we have to also give people more opportunity for nuance.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to force you to jack off to me.
Yeah.
Like, you're not required to like me. But, like, at the same time, like, you know.
But you have a right to be there.
Yeah.
And so it seems like there would be a way that you could set all of this up that doesn't pigeonhole people.
Yeah. Just, like, simple tag systems, I feel, is a really easy way to do that.
Right.
With, like, oh, I want, you know, NBs.
Right.
I want non-binary people.
Sure, yeah.
Or like, I want trans women.
And then actually, like going back to what you were saying about the way that you can exclude straight people on OkCupid or something, even with those tags, I imagine that viewers could then, you could set up a whole system in which viewers could say like, I don't want to see X, Y, or Z.
I don't want to see this. Like if someone's like super racist and is like, I don't want to see, you know, people of this race, you could do that. And it's like, although I guess
there are problems with that too.
although I think that that's like kind of fucked up, at the same time it's like if that person only wants to watch whatever cookie cutter shit that they want to watch and they're going to pay people for it, you know, I'm not going to fucking force you to watch people that you don't like and that you want to be fucking shitty towards.
Right.
And if anything, I feel like allowing them to even see, like allowing them the opportunity to not even see it gives those people more safety, like the people who would get the
I think that's a good point. It probably would cut down on trolling and stuff. Because
I mean, maybe like I'm not like, you know, an analytics expert, but
right,
like
exactly. But it seems plausible. Right? It seems like it's a thing that could happen if you like you let people pre-filter out stuff. Then they're not going to interact with people they're going to be hateful towards.
Yeah,
and then
but
those people aren't going to have to.
Well, I'm
bear
assuming
the burden
that's
of that.
why. I'm assuming that's why.
OkCupid
sets up something like that. Like as a member of a queer community, if I don't want straight people to like hate on me and my lifestyle, you can just cut them out.
You just cut them out. Yeah, it's that easy. And it's like, cool. Then you just don't get seen. And it's like, that's fine. And like, I understand that people will say, well, oh, you're limiting yourself. And it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, from
that's
the people
fine.
you don't want to be
but
around anyway.
Like, who cares? Let's move on.
You
know, but if someone is like, oh man, I really don't want to see trans people.
Right.
They should have the ability to exclude seeing trans people.
Right.
And, you know, as much as it's like, I want people to see trans people as, you know, the genders that they are, at the same time, someone's like, I only want to see cis people.
Right.
I'm not going to fucking force them.
Yeah. I mean, there's a part of me that feels like representational politics is really important, and people seeing things that are outside of their own like comfort zone
For sure.
like allows for an openness.
It allows for personal growth and like them to be like, oh fuck, I didn't think I would find this hot because of the way I think about this. But now it's
like, oh, it turns out that like I do find that hot, or I can relate to this person in a way that I didn't expect to. So I mean, there's something there that I think is important, but I also totally take what you're saying to make sense as well.
Well, and there's ways to do both. Like you could have featured content on the front page that can't be filtered, but would be more diverse, but then let people drill down into the filters. Yeah. So you could do that. But the other thing I was thinking that seems really important here is that I imagine that these categorizations shape what content actually gets produced. There may be like more open-minded MV boys or whatever, like more open-minded people who are just choosing not to make content with certain people, not because they didn't feel like they wanted to. Yeah, but just because they knew they couldn't post it to their site and they weren't going to create a whole separate site that they'd have to market. Yeah, maybe in their personal lives, they're just like, whatever, you know, I'm going to fuck these people, but I'm not allowed to film them because I don't want to create a whole new system. Right. Which I mean is understandable because it's actually a shit ton of work. Yeah. And if you aren't putting a lot of content out on a channel, then it's like kind of not worth your time. Absolutely.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at DomTheStud or on ManyVids at Dominic Rystan, or you can go to domthestud.com for my Chatterbait, sixofus.com for my Pornhub, and domrystan.com for my ManyVids.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
We've been having a great time this year at AVN. We appreciate all of the cam models and clip producers who talk to us on the showroom floor at the top of the episode. And we, of course, appreciate our two insightful guests. You can find Lynn on Twitter at Lynn Comella and on her website at lyncomella.com. Also, please make sure to buy Lynn's book, Vibrator Nation, at your local bookshop. And please check out Dominic on Twitter at DomTheStud, where you can link out to his videos on ManyVids, Pornhub, etc. Stay tuned for our next episode where we will bring you more on-site interviews from AVN. I'm Jessie Sage, and you can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual.
I'm PJ Sage, and you can find me at PeachSage.
We would like to remind you that we do have a Patreon account, and we would appreciate your support. Please visit patreon.com/peepshowpodcast. Thanks to Joe Kennedy for the music. The show was produced by Jessie and PJ Sage. Signing off, have a great week.